We'll say good morning to the people. Looks like we are live on YouTube. Oh, wow. Looks like we're live, and we are live. Where am I? Can you double hear me right now?
I cannot. I can hear you loud and clear. No double here.
All right, man. We're good to go.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto Market Rundown, where we talk about everything that's happening in the great world of cryptocurrency, from the fundamentals in the news to the technicals on the charts. We spend the time doing hours of research so that you all don't have to. And here we are yet again, TiVo. The crypto markets are as hot as ever. There is so much going on. This is probably going to be one of the longer, more action packed market updates that we have probably put out in the last couple of months, which is impressive. Because if we look at the episodes that we've done here fairly recently, there's been a lot going on. I mean, Bitcoin pushing up to 100K, but and also just altcoins running across the board. We're going to talk a lot about that as well. So make sure you're tuned in here. Make sure you're listening tight. And when we kind of just look at what's happening here, I mean, there's a squeeze on Bitcoin. We have records being broken, ETF inflows flipping, Ethereum finally running, and so much more. And we kind of just want to take a step back and look at the crypto market as a whole here because, a lot of people believe that this run isn't over. And there's a lot of evidence that's pointing in that direction. And that's one of the big things that we want to kind of cover in today's episode is just looking at all this evidence that is pointing towards not only Bitcoin hitting new all-time highs, but also a lot of altcoins which are priming up to do it. And just in the last week or so, we've seen many altcoins run hundreds and hundreds of percent. We want to show some of those big winners. We hope everyone was able to take part in them. But man, I'm hyped up. And a quick reminder here before I pass it off to my fellow compadre TiVo is that if you're listening on any other platform, maybe you're coming in live. We want to say welcome to everyone that's coming in from X and Instagram and YouTube and everywhere else. But if you want to look at all the visuals, maybe you're coming from Audible or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, well, go over to our YouTube channel. It's the Crypto 101 podcast on YouTube. If you're wondering what kind of charts and news articles and graphics that we are referencing on the screen here, all of those visuals are going to be on the Crypto 101 YouTube channel. And that's where you can see all the video things that we're going to be referencing throughout this session. So, TiVo, how are things going on your end?
Doing good, man. Good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining us. We've got Michael Sane in the chat. What's up, Mike? And yeah, just an exciting time in crypto. It's we talk about it every week, right? That's why we're here. But these times when prices are, going higher and there's so much to talk about in the space. I mean, it's every day there's something going on, and we've been getting a lot of new, obviously, subscribers on YouTube, a lot of new listeners to the podcast, people coming back. Our socials are growing, so it's really just an exciting time. And part of that excitement was we talked about it last week, a little sneak preview, but we do have our merch store. It is live. I know I sent you the link, and I think we'll be promoting it a little bit more heavily in the coming weeks. But it literally just went live today, so I did put a link below in the description if people want to check out the designs. Give us a comment, let us know what you think, or if you have any ideas for ones you like. But maybe there's some Christmas gifts there for you where you could maybe sell a little bit of your meme coins and buy a meme coin T-shirt or something fun. So check out that link below, and yeah, we'll have more in it in the coming weeks.
Definitely. Yeah, we're excited to be able to drop that. We got some cool things. TiVo has been hard at work. And, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think he did a good job. So,
Oh,
at the very
thanks,
least,
man.
check it out. There's some really cool graphics over there. But let's talk about the crypto markets, right? Let's talk about what's happening here because we have a gigantic list of things to go through. So we're going to try to keep this under an hour. That's the goal. But let's go ahead and begin because, the first thing on our list is just simply looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is in a big old squeeze on the daily chart. So if we're looking at the 1-day time frame, which we'll throw up here in just a second, Bitcoin has a big squeeze that's happening on this 1-day time frame because we had this big move to the upside. Now we've been consolidating for a couple of weeks, and inside this consolidation, that is where we're getting the big squeeze on Bitcoin. And this is happening through a formation that we like to call a pennant or asymmetrical triangle. This is where we see a pattern of lower highs and higher lows, and resistance is falling, support is rising, and that's what creates this squeeze effect. And
Are you supposed to be sharing your screen?
not yet,
Not
not
yet.
yet. I'm giving the rundown first. I'm painting
Got
the
it.
picture.
Tee it up. The first hole. Tee it up.
Exactly. There's got to be a build up to it, but when we just kind of look at what's happening on Bitcoin here, that is the big thing that's on my mind. It's one of the top things saying, hey, Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency out there, it's seeing this big squeeze right below $100,000. And if we get this breakout to the upside, that's where I think we just blow through 100K, probably push to 105, maybe 110, maybe higher than that. And there's a lot of big things happening. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up that screen share now. And again, if you are coming in from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you need to go over to the YouTube to see this. But for everyone that just wants to listen and kind of follow along here, give me one sec while I throw this up. This is that Bitcoin chart that I'm talking about. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make this a little bit more clear. But we can see that Bitcoin has been forming these lower highs and these higher lows. And we can see that support is converging upwards. We have resistance, which is falling downwards. And this is where we start getting that squeeze effect because the range was previously 85K up to about 100K. And now the range in here is about 97K down to maybe 94, 95K. And we can see that this is getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. The deeper that we get into this. So imagine that you're kind of squeezing a balloon, you're squeezing it towards one direction. Well, eventually pressure is going to build up in that direction and then pop. And the way that we get a directional bias here is by saying, hey, where were we before? And beforehand, we were coming from the bottom side up and then forming this consolidation, which makes me personally lean bearish or bullish, not bearish. I'm leaning bullish here. But yeah, I mean, things are looking great for Bitcoin. Again, if we get a breakout of this, I could see about a 10% pop in either direction. Hopefully, we don't see anything to the downside. It could probably bring us to the mid 80s. But again, I'm pretty bull biased here, looking for Bitcoin to shoot through 100K here. And this is something that's realistically possible before the end of this month. I mean, heck, probably in the next couple of weeks, we could see this. And Bitcoin really is kind of performing here. I mean, the inflows are looking great. There's still a lot of attention that's happening here. But I think one of the other big things that we've seen, and we'll get into this in just a second, is the fall of Bitcoin dominance. This has been something that we have been tracking for, weeks now? Months at this point. And we've been saying, hey, watch Bitcoin dominance, watch this thing break down below the 50-day moving average, below the 200-day moving average. We've talked about it really recently, just saying, hey, this is historically where we see Bitcoin dominance start to top out, 60 to 70%. And sure enough, we've gotten this giant move to the downside, which is allowing altcoins to just go bananas, just crazy. Altcoins are making millionaires overnight right now. And we're going to talk a lot about the news and some of these like fundamental catalysts in a moment. But just looking at the charts, and I think we have to start with the charts because it's so impressive. There's just a ton of money that's being made in altcoins.
If I could just jump in, just say,
Yeah.
man, that Bitcoin dominance chart is a sight to see because we've been covering this. I mean, dude, for like a year, basically, right? And
Yeah.
you've always said, Brendan, Bryce, and everybody's always told us, like, hey, like, this is what we're looking for. This is what we're looking for. Once this Bitcoin dominance breaks down, this is when altcoin season is going to start. And I understood it, like, technically, and I understood the concept, but we really never saw it happen. And we would bring it up every couple of weeks, and it's just like, man, this thing, as you can see there, that's the perfect shot. Is like it's just trending up on that line, and then look at that dump, and then sure enough, it is. I mean, I don't want to say it's officially altcoin season, but it sure kind of feels like that, especially with all these, like you said, millionaires being made overnight and all these memes and dinosaur coins that people are talking about going crazy. So I think, for the people that have been here every week, it's so exciting to see a new development like this and to cover it. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is exciting, and I think the even more exciting part is that it looks like we're still in the early innings of this, because in the 2017 cycle we saw Bitcoin dominance fall to around 30 to 40%. In the 2021 cycle, we saw Bitcoin dominance fall again to around just below 40%, and right now we're at 55%. So if altcoins are going crazy, and we've only seen about a retracement of maybe 10% or not even 10% in Bitcoin dominance, from 61 to 55, about a 6% retracement in Bitcoin dominance. What's going to happen when we fall, 10%, 15, maybe 20%? And again, that's where altcoins just go crazy. So I'm excited for what the future holds here. And, one of the big things that has been doing good is Ethereum. And we want to look at the inflows, and we want to cover everything around Ethereum. But just briefly before we kind of move on, even at the time of recording this, Ethereum is breaking out to new monthly, multi-month highs of 3,800. It's breaking the downtrend. And really just alongside this, there's been a handful of winners. We look at XRP here recently. This almost looks like it's not even a real chart, but this thing's skyrocketing from 40 cents up to almost $3. XLM and Cardano and Tron here putting in a 50-something% candle yesterday, which was no, I'm sorry, it was a near 100% candle yesterday.
Wow.
On some big news.
Justin's son's going to be buying a couple bananas on a wall.
Yeah. And people joke that was the catalyst. I think that there was some other things that were involved there, but yeah, there's a really funny video of Justin's son circulating around where he bought this art that was just a banana. I think that was like duct taped to a wall. And then he bought it, walks up, rips the banana off, and then eats it. And he bought it for like $6 million or something.
Crazy.
It's a wild thing. But yeah, I mean, there's winners all around. One of the other ones that we like to talk about over here, Ondo hitting new all-time highs. And really just success across the board. I saw Chainlink hitting multi-year highs, and things are really, really running. And so we love to see it. We hope everyone is profiting. But there's some pretty cool predictions that are circulating around out there as well. Tivo, I know that you came across one from Tom Lee, just talking about the current state of Bitcoin, and it really aligned with some of the stuff that we've been saying here in recent weeks as well.
Yeah, so Tom Lee is a CNBC contributor. He's head of Fundstrat, which is an interesting research firm that is really, they definitely do all types of finances and stock market and stuff, but he's really been a Bitcoin bull. There's a lot of videos from him, dating back to 2017, 18, telling people just put, 1 to 5% of their portfolios into crypto. And so this is a quick clip here, and he's talking about obviously the current price level, where he think it might go, and then the reasons behind it, which is the title of our episode, which is the Bitcoin supply is low. So let's listen into Tom Lee here.
Do you want to, we always get a Bitcoin comment from you before we let you go. Normally it got stuck under 100. That's a pretty, it's a psychological level, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think some of this could be, there's a lot of folks who don't want Bitcoin over 100,000, and some of it may be the exchanges themselves are concerned because there is a pretty low supply of Bitcoin available over the counter. So you have a supply shortage, and if Bitcoin makes a move above 100,000, I think there'd be a big chase. So I'm still confident Bitcoin's going to close much higher before year end.
Before year end?
Before year end, yeah.
So break $100,000 before the end of the year?
Yeah, well above 100,000 before year end. It's just a matter of time.
It's December 2nd. It's not that long, Tom. So it's going to do it in the next 4 weeks.
Tom makes bold short-term calls.
I know, you're nuts, and they all come, usually they come true.
So there it is. Yeah, wild short-term prediction for Tom Lee. I think you got to appreciate it. Somebody like that really, goes on national TV and puts himself out there for those type of predictions. And then I did go and I found a chart that this is off of X. Let's see here. Here we go. Let's pull it up. And this is kind of visualizing what he was talking about is, the supply of Bitcoin's getting low. price is high, balance is low. So we've kind of been talking about it with, Michael Saylor continuously buying Bitcoin, it seems almost every week. And then you've got, different companies like Marathon and Similar Scientific and Rumble starting to say like they want to adopt the Bitcoin standard. I believe Marathon just did a similar raise, a 0% note on the bond to basically start, copying Saylor's theory and how he's running MicroStrategy. So, and I think we're going to talk about that later, how MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor met with Microsoft to kind of pitch that strategy as well. So it's an interesting time. I think there's a lot of talk on the timeline when Michael Saylor goes and buys, these huge amounts of Bitcoin. We kind of stay in this range, and people are wondering why we're not rocketing north when he keeps buying billions of dollars worth. I personally don't have the answer to that. I don't know if you have a take on it, Brendan, but this is kind of the data of the amount of Bitcoin that are available over the counter, as they call it. And you're on mute, Brendan. So we'll get you unmuted and we'll hop you back in.
It's the classic Brendan move is come back from a video on mute. But what I was trying to say is that it's only a matter of time until I think we break 100K. And we had this gigantic move from Bitcoin where we rose, nearly $30,000-$40,000 to the upside from 60K and borderline 50K in October. And we went all the way up to 100K in like less than a 2-month window. And so I think what we're doing now is the market's just cooling off. I mean, it's an understatement to say that Bitcoin just sprinted a marathon by moving $40,000 by moving about $40,000 in less than a 2-month window. And so I think now it's just taking a breather after that gigantic move. We also put in the largest daily candle that Bitcoin has ever seen in history in terms of US dollar valuation. And again, I think right now what we're really just seeing is a consolidation, a cool off period. And that's exactly what a bull flag is that it's a continuation pattern before seeing a deeper move to the upside. And that's, again, just truly what I believe is happening here is that things are consolidating, cooling off, and it's also allowing altcoins to play catch up. That's why we're seeing Bitcoin dominance fall. It's not because Bitcoin's falling in value. Bitcoin's holding value. Altcoins are just rising and catching back up, which allow altcoins to outperform Bitcoin, and that's why we're seeing Bitcoin dominance fall. And so I think that what this is a very healthy, very normal thing that we see every single market cycle where Bitcoin moves up, it cools down, just chills out for a little bit. Altcoins play catch up, skyrocket in value. And then I think we can see another move to the upside in Bitcoin. And I think both Bitcoin and altcoins are going to be able to benefit or hopefully continue to benefit over the next several months to, maybe even the next year, which is where a lot of people are saying we could top out, at some point in maybe the next year or so by the end of 2025. And, that's something that is certainly a possibility and likely. We typically see that Bitcoin top and the crypto market top about a year to year and a half after the halving, which would put us at some point next year. But the good news of that is that, we're not even at that 1-year mark yet. We still got about another, I think it's 5-6 months to go until we even reach there. And so data would suggest that prices should continue to push higher. And it's a good thing for everyone else. And also, I think on the supply issue, that's something, Tiva, that we have mentioned numerous times. We've talked about if Michael Saylor and BlackRock and these ETFs continue to buy Bitcoin, they're removing from the supply. A bunch has already been lost. If we're looking at the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and if Bitcoin becomes adopted as a reserve currency or a reserve asset, that would also drastically reduce Bitcoin supply because governments and companies would be buying it. And we've talked about the real supply issues that could be there for Bitcoin. It's a great thing for existing investors. It's less of a great thing for people who want to continue to buy in or feel like they haven't bought enough. Because what you get in a supply issue like this with the image that you flashed up on the screen is that as supply is reduced, if demand stays steady or grows at all, then that causes price to be essentially have forced appreciation because the supply continues to reduce and reduce and reduce. And, when we're looking at that, I think it said supply on exchanges was at all-time lows or something like that. That does affect prices. Or I saw some chart that was saying that the supply of Bitcoin was nearing these just record level lows. And yeah, I mean, look at that. It's a crazy thing to see that, over the last year or so, supply on exchanges has just been plummeting as the price has been skyrocketing. And that correlates perfectly to the picture that we're trying to paint here, saying, hey, supply is being reduced. This is forcing price to appreciate. And if we continue to do this, if we continue to have, Bitcoin adoption, ETFs, taking Bitcoin out of supply, governments buying Bitcoin, companies buying Bitcoin, then that just continues to reduce the supply, which should force Bitcoin to continue to appreciate. So I think it's something everyone needs to be paying attention to. But one of the other cool things that we like to look at is just the average return rate for a month. Because believe it or not, there are some months that perform better on just with Bitcoin than others. There's good months and some less. I don't want to say bad months because there's never really like a bad month, but there's some months that just aren't as good as others. And December, on one hand, is a really, really solid month for the crypto markets. You can see that we like to call this the Santa Claus rally. October, November are historically really, really good months. But when we're looking at the average return rate of December, we're still looking at an average return rate of 5.5%, roughly speaking. And we typically have these Santa Claus rallies during these bull runs. You can see that we had a Santa Claus rally in 2017. We had a Santa Claus rally in 2020. And it's looking like it's possible to have a Santa Claus rally once again this year, kind of, again, feeding into that rough 4-year cycle where we could see Bitcoin potentially pumping up, maybe double digits on a month like this. And I still think that it's possible. And what that would really do is just ultimately push Bitcoin up, again, above 100K. So it's on the table, Tebow.
Yeah, I think the red circles there are halving years as well, and I think that times up with some election timeframes as well. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of green, It would be interesting to see. I think I know we had an October video. We do this basically every first of the month. This chart comes out all over X, and we show it. But I think we did October. I know we called October, and then I think we set the table really well going into the election in November. And yeah, like you said, we're pretty pulled up. I think there's some consolidation here that you mentioned. It's all healthy. It's all good. But yeah, for December, I think some things to keep in note is that, as much as, we like to think of ourselves as separate from TradFi, we really are, I think now more than ever, kind of tied, I want to say at the hip, but we are marching a little bit together. And so that, there's a lot of data coming out this week. There's the jobs data on Friday. And then Fed Chair Powell, there's a rate cut decision coming up. I believe it's the 18th. And so I think just the markets in general probably this is my opinion again, but probably range bound until then. And then once that Fed decision hits, the market will digest it, and you don't know how it's going to digest it. But then after it does, I think after that December 18th meeting is when you're going to start seeing the averages, the larger averages, the S&P, IWM and Bitcoin, hopefully make a run for that Santa Claus rally. And I think that's when we'll get the decision making of how December is going to lay out. Kind of like how we waited for the election, right? It was, that was the catalyst for November. And I got a stat. So I got a stat for the people, again, talking to the larger indices. So the years when the market is up 10% or more, and it's an election year. So there's only 2 instances, so it's not a huge data point. But if the market is up, this is the S&P, up 10% or more, and it's an election year, it's only happened 2 times in the history of record keeping, and both times there was a 2% Santa Claus rally those 2 years. So an interesting little tidbit there for you for going into the Santa Claus rally season.
People are expecting it this year. And, if everyone's believing in it and everyone's doing it, well, then I think it's just a little bit more likely to happen. So It's something to keep an eye on. I, for one, hope that we get that Santa Claus rally, and certainly think that it's possible. Also want to bring us back to Ethereum because Ethereum here, we talked about it at the beginning of the episode, at the beginning of the rundown, but Ethereum is breaking out to these new multi-month highs of, really, I think it was above 2,800, or excuse me,
It just
above,
it just hit 3,800 while we started the episode.
yeah,
Just got the
30,
notification.
and now it's pushing up to 3,850 already. It's
Woo!
up about 6.5% on the day, and just continuing to run. But, a big reason that this is happening, we always like to look at the catalyst is, number one, it broke out. We kind of looked at that earlier. It broke out of its downtrend. It broke over the major moving averages, stuff like that. But just looking at Ethereum from an ETF standpoint, Ethereum's ETF, and I'm going to flash this up on the screen, so give me one moment. But Ethereum's ETF just had its largest day ever of net inflows. So I'm throwing this up on the screen now so that everyone can see it. And if we go all the way down over here and we take a look at this, this is the largest day that we have ever seen in the Ethereum ETFs. It's this chart on the right here. And the second highest day was actually just from last month as well, where we saw around $295 million in net inflows on November 11th. But what we saw just a couple of days ago on November 29th was over 332, almost $333 million in net Ethereum ETF inflows. Now, this is something that we've been tracking because the Ethereum ETFs kind of saw mediocre inflows for a little while, and the Bitcoin ETFs continued to break records, push higher. I mean, they were having $1 billion plus a day for a couple of those days of inflows. And what we saw over here on November 29th with this new record day for the Ethereum ETFs was that the Ethereum ETF actually saw more net inflows than the Bitcoin ETF. And that's never happened before. So it just makes it a big deal. So it's this monumental moment where not only was Ethereum's price rising and outperforming Bitcoin, but the ETFs, which is something that we haven't seen, is now outperforming Bitcoin's ETFs in terms of net inflows, seeing more than what Bitcoin has been seeing. So that's a big deal. Record numbers coming out here for Ethereum, which of course is helping to make this thing appreciate. And we're just going to throw up the chart here as we're talking because this thing is moving like no other. But I also wanted to run through some numbers for everyone to help everyone just understand the circumstances or kind of the spot that Ethereum's in here. So the US spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs have so far seen over $7.54 billion in monthly net inflows. And I believe that's a number for November. And what that means is that is more than $1.5 billion compared to what we saw during February's previous record of $6.03 billion in ETF inflows. So again, the previous record from February was around $6 billion. Now we're seeing a new record in November of $7.5 billion, putting us up almost $1.5 billion more net inflows for November. Again, just shattering records. And Tiva, we've said this quite a few times. We've talked to some of these ETF providers, and Bitwise. We look at Wisdom Tree, and a bunch of other players that are key in this space. I know 21 Shares was another one. Some of the Bloomberg intelligence guys, and the one thing that they say is, hey, we expect ETF inflows to increase next year. As time goes on, we think that year one is the slower year. People are getting warmed up to it. They're getting familiar with it. All the large investors, the smart money, the big money, all those players want to make sure that it's tried and true and tested. And then they let everyone else kind of go on to the testing grounds, work it out, and then they come in after the 1 year mark. Well, now that we're starting to get close to that 1 year mark, we can see that the ETF inflows are increasing and that some of these big money investors are very much warmed up to the idea. So it fits so perfectly with what a lot of them have said. And if this stands true, then we could continue to shatter these records and we could see more records being broken, maybe not only in December, but potentially over the course of next year, multiple times as well. So I think it's another thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and if I could just take the baton there and do a quick promo. Speaking of big money investing, and basically everything Brendan just said leads me to saying that next week is our hedge fund summit. And we have been working on this for over a month. Obviously, we give you tons of good interviews every week and do this show every week, but we have over 27 interviews that we will be showcasing next week in the Hedge Fund Summit with people from Bitwise. I know obviously Matt Hogan episode just dropped this week, but we're also going to have their head of research. Brendan's interviewing them tomorrow for the Hedge Fund Summit. We've got Brian Dixon from Off the Chain Capital, Jim Hiltner from Superstate, another big fund, Alex Zozos, the Superstate head of legal. He actually used to work in the SEC. So this hedge fund summit is something I'm very proud of because it takes us as a team literally 2 months to make it, and it's 27 amazing interviews. There's going to be huge alpha in it, and it's completely free, guys. So check the description right next to the merch link. I'm going to put the registration link for the crypto hedge fund summit, which is airing next week. So it's free to sign up. There's nothing else you need to do other than enter your email address, and we're going to send you a link. And it's a live event that Bryce will be hosting, and I'll be there as well. So yeah, just exciting to build off that big money speech from Brendan. Is the big money's here, and I think it was so exciting to finally see Ethereum and the Ethereum ETFs get some gas and start going, because I know we were really excited. I think it was like in the summer when the Ethereum ETF got approved. It felt like it was a no-brainer, right? Just like, oh man, like the Bitcoin ETF went in, and it was a little bit of sell the news, but then it rocketed. So pile in ETH, and it didn't really move. And you see on the timeline like RIP ETH and all that stuff. And anytime you see that, you got to think maybe there's a contrarian play there, even though the performance hasn't been up to par maybe with Bitcoin and other alts. But it's exciting to see the money flowing in there. And yeah, like I said, when you listen to Matt Hogan, the episode that literally just dropped yesterday, talk about how bullish he is on ETH, and he's the one literally traveling around the country talking to these people with all the money, and they're asking about ETH. Maybe there's a little bit of education time that needs to be had before the big money starts flowing in, but it feels like we are maybe at that inflection point heading into 2025.
Yeah. Again, I think everyone should go and sign up for that. Maybe we can get a link for everyone that's watching live. We can maybe throw a link to sign up in the YouTube description. But I think that this is something that everyone who is interested in crypto should go watch. Again, like Tivo said, it's completely free. We talked to Galaxy, Robinhood, Superstate, Wisdom Tree, Bitwise, 21 Shares, all these big names, as well as like specific projects like Maple and Axelar and Flare and a lot of others. It's something that you are not going to want to miss. These have been some of the most informative and some of my favorite interviews that I've ever done. So I think everyone should definitely go and sign up for it. So that's, I guess, enough of our shout out. But, it is something that we are genuinely hyped up and excited about. I think it's probably going to be one of the best summits that we've ever done.
It is. It is the best summit. I can say that. It really is. I know me and you have talked about it. Like, these guests are high level. Obviously the podcast is high level, but, summit usually with the more people, sometimes you get some projects we're more interested in that don't have the following, but these are high level, in the weeds money managers dealing with billions of dollars. So it's super exciting.
Agreed, man. And some of them are hundreds of billions of dollars, which I like to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, well, speaking of billions of dollars, who has that in cash is Microsoft. And that's exactly who Michael Saylor pitched the Bitcoin standard to earlier this week. And it was he literally presented it. The stats behind it, which he released, was he practiced this thing 21 plus times to perfect it down to 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And he recorded the presentation and put it out on X for everybody to see. So if you're interested in how Michael Saylor pitched the Bitcoin standard to Microsoft, head over to his X account. It's pretty interesting and quick. And maybe you can get a little prep for heading home for Christmas to pitch the Bitcoin standard to your family. But I think Microsoft is voting on this. So I think it's a vote. I don't know the details of if it's every shareholder gets to vote on this or if it's a board decision. but I know that it's happening this month. The Microsoft shareholder vote on buying Bitcoin is December 10th. So literally a week away. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, it will be. Again, just more and more companies are looking at adopting this, and it's cool, man. It's exciting. They're a big name, and again, I think that would be something beneficial. We'll see if it goes through and if it happens. I think if that there's anyone to give a pitch on something like that, Michael Saylor is probably the guy to do it, and it's the guy that you want doing it. Just with the success that he's had with MicroStrategy and kind of just his thesis is simple, but it's effective. And
Right, and I think that this month, with all the gains and market cap gains that MicroStrategy has had, they're actually on the table for NASDAQ 100 considerations. I think the S&P 500 might be a little far out for them in the sense of, the S&P people might not want to vote them in, but they're qualified for being included into some of these indices and large funds. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that the NASDAQ 100 I have here, additions announcement is December 13th for the NASDAQ 100. And it'll be interesting to see, if MSTR gets included in that. That could be cool. So a lot going on this month, along with this. I got the December Fed meeting date here too, December 18th. So you have a lot going on, and there's a Bitcoin conference this month, I believe, in Saudi, maybe.
Yeah, so I think so.
Yeah.
So. There's always something going on, but in other big news, we've started to see a lot more ETFs kind of get passed along. And recently we talked about the XRP ETFs, but now there's more coming out from Grayscale as they have officially applied for a Solana ETF. I think that they're the third or fourth party to do something like this, as the Solana ETFs really are coming to the forefront now. But yeah, Grayscale officially files for a Solana ETF. That has helped the Solana price kind of recover here. That thing's up, I think, over 2,000% since its cycle bottom towards the end of 2022. And, it was one of the few altcoins that was able to hit a new all-time high here, I think just about a week or two ago. So definitely keep an eye on Solana. I know XRP, again, has some ETFs that are being filed as well. I think that we could continue to see more of these altcoin ETFs as we go into 2025 and as regulation kind of eases up and softens. The other big thing that I saw come across my desk, Tivo, was that Avalanche is having what they are calling the, and I quote, the biggest upgrade that they have seen since the protocol itself is launched. So since Avalanche is launched, this is the biggest thing that they have ever done, and that's how they're wording it. And this is for the Avalanche 9000 upgrade. And essentially what this is going to do is this is going to kind of revamp their ecosystem. It is going to massively improve scalability and efficiency, and even things like interoperability. And so they're going to be adding some new features as well. They're going to be having some EVM enhancements, and then they're going to be looking to optimize their subnets and some other things. But overall, what this is going to do is not only improve the network, but also just like improve all the little things that are part of it. Everybody wants faster transaction times, cheaper gas fees, but then there's also just like core infrastructure improvements as well, which is a good thing to see, because when you look at AVAX, they're already pretty widely adopted. They're already pretty well known and pretty well used, but they're not satisfied with where they're at now. And they're saying, hey, it's been several years since we've launched, and we can actually upgrade this to make it so much better than where we were even just a couple of years ago. So this is something that I'm keeping an eye on. It's something that I'm pretty cool. I got a little bit of exposure there, so full disclosure. But AVAX is coming in hot right now.
Yeah, and last year, this is another tidbit from TiVo, is the AVAX. I had some friends down at Art Basel down in Miami, and last year I remember getting texts like, "Hey, have you heard of AVAX? What's this AVAX crypto? They're throwing parties. They're having the mega yacht parties and the big apartment housing rentals throwing parties and that." And that exact week, AVAX was ripping, and I thought that was interesting. And it is also Art Basel this week, so you definitely can't. I wouldn't call that fundamental analysis by any means, but hey, maybe they're announcing their Avalanche 9000 upgrade. I know that they're down there again in Miami this week, so maybe there's some synergy for getting the word out about AVAX this week.
Yeah, hopefully so. Hopefully we continue to see it moving up because there has been yeah, I don't know, it's been performing pretty well so far. So I'm all for new all-time highs. The final thing that we saw here as we kind of begin to bring this to a close is that, the meme coin space has been big, and we've talked about Solana, but one of the key protocols on Solana has been Pump.Fun. And for people who aren't familiar, Pump.Fun, again, is a Solana native project. So it's inside the Solana ecosystem. And they are the primary creator of all of these meme coins that we have been seeing. So what they've done is they've really revolutionized the way that meme coins can be created into a very simple, easy to do, cost-effective way. And anyone can go on and just really pump these things out. No pun intended. And they have blown up. They're very widely used. It's a huge reason that meme coins became so popular again because they made it so easy and accessible. And so they have been destroying the game this year. They have now reached, I think, 240 million. Yeah, Tivo's got it on screen. They've reached $240 million in cumulative revenue for the entirety of this year. And then last month alone, in the month of November, they peaked with over $93 million in revenue, which is the most that they've ever done. And they did that in a single month. That's more than most projects will do in a year, and they're doing it in a single month. So it's crazy. It's been something cool to watch out for. And yeah, I mean, man, there's money circulating around. And I also think that that's one of the biggest misconceptions about the crypto space is that these projects and these companies inside of it, they're not actually producing revenue when it's just not true. You have this project that pretty much comes onto the scene this year, comes in, and then, is now doing well over, 200 million dollars in revenue. And it's quite a bit. And I can't imagine that their costs are anywhere near that. So they've got to be pocketing a solid bag, and we love to see it.
Yeah, I think same thing with like Polymarket, where 6 months ago, a year ago, it was a niche thing, and now it's like literally one of the most visited apps, up there with Robinhood and Coinbase and all that. So it's not niche anymore. And yeah, I think Pump Fund definitely is a little bit more niche than Polymarket right now, but they've been making headlines. Both good for exposure, but they definitely had some bad headlines, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago on their live stream function, which they took down. But they're trying to find their way, and you got to appreciate the innovation. And I think some people are using it mostly in the right way and having a good time, having fun with the space, and trying to create some value and have some fun, which is an interesting, you can't discount that for the amount of money that they're making and the amount of eyeballs that they have, right? It's an eyeball economy across the world right now. You got to get your product, get your face in front of people, and this seems to be the newest addition to that.
Yeah, I agree, man.
And but before we wrap our final segment here, we've had Michael Sain. Our guy Mike has literally been here the entire time. I think he was in the waiting room before we started. He's given me a thumbs up. He said it's a great night to get the bullish hoodie, and I couldn't agree more. But Mike had one question for you, Brendan. If you could just cover that, and then we'll get out of here. Mike was just wondering, I know we talked about, the Bitcoin cycle. What do you think about the altcoin season cycle? What should we look at, for how long that might last?
Yeah, so I think that we're going to see peaks and troughs, right? So I don't think it's just going to go up, 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 for the next 6 months or something like that. We're going to have these periods where altcoins do pull back, maybe 30% at a time. And, we've seen that happen about a dozen times every single market cycle. So if you go back and you look at like 2017, 2018, maybe 2021, and now going 2024, 2025, over all of these, we can expect around a dozen double-digit pullbacks. So maybe something like 20, 30, 40%, especially when it comes to altcoins. So that's one thing that I would say, just before I even get into it. But I think when it comes to altcoins, I could see this again, kind of following that same timeline as Bitcoin, where altcoins continue to run. And usually we see altcoins top out after Bitcoin. Bitcoin runs first, it ends first. Altcoins run second, they end second. Not by too much, maybe by like a month or two. But when it comes to altcoins, I could see them running and kind of following the rough, again, rough same timeline as Bitcoin. And I'm looking for altcoins to continue pushing higher going into 2025. And then I think at some point next year, we'll see. Again, it's hard to say because we're still a little bit far out, but historically speak, and it also changes from altcoin project to altcoin project. Some might top out earlier, some might top out later. That's just kind of the way that things go. But I am looking for, at bare minimum, kind of pushing us into maybe spring. And that's kind of the earliest that I'm looking. But, we could get a Santa Claus rally and then maybe one of those first real pullbacks. And I think that's also something to kind of keep an eye out for, but not financial advice.
Never personal financial advice. But man, I'll hand it off to you to wrap it up. But really fun episode. Energy was so high. The live was electric. The chat on YouTube was electric. Thank you to everybody for joining. And I don't know if you noticed, Brendan, but I look a lot clearer today. So hopefully the internet's in a better spot moving forward for these lives. Because I don't know, this was really fun. I really had a good time.
Yeah, I agree, man. Clear cameras, clear vision for the crypto markets. But man, we appreciate everyone coming in. We're having a blast with these episodes, if you can't tell. And how can you not be when the crypto market is as on fire as it is right now? Not even just the crypto markets, everything. I think we saw Dow Jones, NASDAQ, S&P 500, Bitcoin, altcoins, you name it, everything's skyrocketing up here to new all-time highs. Even Ethereum's running now, and we love being a part of all of it. So if you enjoyed this episode, and if you enjoy all the content that we put out every single week for free, then all that we ask is that you consider hitting that like button, consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're coming in from, maybe one of the social medias, X or, YouTube or Instagram, give us a follow. Check us out. If you're coming in from Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything like that, leave us a review. And of course, if you really do like the content that we make, then go down to the description in the YouTube video and check out some of the links that we got. We got a bunch of great merch, like Tivo said. We had a really cool summit that is completely free that everyone can check out. And then we got some good cryptocurrency communities where if you want to get plugged in to like-minded individuals, you can go there, check it out as well. And it's a great spot for everyone. But we appreciate everyone watching here. And, as we wrap up, we're going to see all of you at the same time, same place next week.
Clear.
All right.
Dude, that was killer.
That was probably one of the best episodes we've done.
It was one of the best episodes we've ever done, and it was the cleanest live episode I've produced. I get a little my bad in the beginning when I was like, "Hey, are you sharing your screen?" You probably said I'll share in a minute. Like in the beginning, those first couple minutes, I have like all these tabs open, and I'm trying to make sure everything's. So like I know you can see like I'm over here looking at this, and like then I saw you talking about it. I'm like, "Fuck, is he supposed to be sharing the charts?"
No,
but that was our only. That was like literally our only.
And then I was muted at one point.
Yeah, but dude, you were quick. You were